Good morning and a warm welcome to all of our attendees at our webinar in 2018. For our topic today, we will explore why conversational marketing is shaping the future of online shopping. I'm also delighted to share with you that we have a very special guest from Forrester Research today. But before that, allow me to introduce myself. I am Emily Go, the head of US marketing for iAdvize, and I will be your host today. Here's the flow of today's webinar. We will begin with a formal presentation for approximately 30 minutes, followed by a 10 to 15 minutes Q&A. Should you have any questions at all for today's speakers, please type your questions and we will get to as many as we can during the Q&A session. As some of you may have seen it on our Twitter feed, we are supporting social sharing on today's webinar. We are using the hashtag iAdvizeLive. You will see that on the bottom right of the title slide. If you are out there on social media, give us a shout out on Twitter. Let us know you are out there. After the webinar, you will be receiving a recorded session as well as the PDF version of today's slide deck of the webinar. And of course, feel free to pass this along to your colleagues. So let me introduce our esteemed speakers today. I have Terrence Fox, who is the Strategic Project Director here at iAdvize. He has been working with many of our clients and partners of iAdvize and possesses a vast experience to share with us today. And of course, we are thrilled to have James McQueevy, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. Serving CMOs, James' strategy models identify digital disruptions on companies and prepare them to serve their customers. So let me pass this over to James to begin today's formal presentation. I'm going to turn on the camera and you will be able to see James.
Well, thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone, for joining us to talk about a really important and timely topic, as you'll see. Maybe I'll start with just a quick thought about what's the environment in which we're sharing this message about digital transformation and the transition from mass advertising to a more conversational marketing. The environment is something that we're all acutely and maybe painfully aware of. We're dealing with headlines like this, where media agencies last year lowered their global ad spending forecast by significant numbers. You had major companies like Procter & Gamble announcing they would cut billions of dollars, but actually cutting as a test $100 million in what they called largely ineffective digital ads, and they saw no effect as a result of the cut. Everywhere you look, people are starting to panic. Is it the end of advertising? Well, it might be the end of advertising as we know it, but let's just make clear this is happening in an environment where consumers are also expressing their preferences as well as advertisers. We describe what we're living with right now as the age of the customer, and advertising is at risk in the age of the customer. Consumers have clearly grown weary of being interrupted everywhere they go. In the meantime, marketers are frustrated with these digital ads and their performance, like Procter & Gamble indicated. So we see 38% of US online adults have installed an ad blocker, similar numbers around the world. We're seeing that the average display ad click-through rate is now about 1/3%. So both the consumer and the marketer, neither is really happy. And as a result, it's causing a little bit of a backlash. We say that, at both sides, the consumer and the marketer tend to ignore advertising now. 50% of US online adults actively avoid ads on websites. A similar number actively avoid mobile in-app ads. And mobile was supposed to be the more personal of these solutions for delivering messages to marketers. We see on the to consumers, but we see on the marketer side that we're seeing announcements from major agencies, major media buying groups, that they're freezing spending, that they're investigating, auditing their spending, and major advertisers beyond Procter & Gamble, GE, Sears, and others are just auditing their digital buys with such intensity, and they're coming back and reporting that, in fact, they're not getting what they think they were paying for to begin with. So what is this? Well, let me tell you what it isn't. This isn't just about forcing Google and Facebook to be better partners, although it is that too, let's be honest, that has to happen. But it is not the death of advertising. Instead, what I am actually calling the end of advertising is really the signal of a new birth, a more complete marketing and customer experience is about to happen. And we are best positioned right here with the brands that we have, the media opportunities that we have, the conversational relationship potential ahead of us, which I'm going to turn to now. It's time to be the midwives of that birth, if that's not too corny a way to say it. So let's talk about what's happening. Technology is bringing a fundamental change in how consumers engage with marketers, with the brands they care about, the experiences that they value. So this is technology driven, but I want to make sure you understand that technology isn't making this happen so much as finally freeing both the marketer and the consumer. Let's talk about what I mean by answering this question. What exactly is the change that we're describing here? You know, today, thanks to all these technologies we already have, and we have many yet to come, consumers have too many options. This has been understood now for several decades that we live in a world of superabundance, where we have 10 different ways to solve every possible problem we have, and each of them is getting more and more convenient, easier to accomplish, and yet the technology is the provider of these solutions. At the same time, technology tends to multiply options. Now when I land somewhere in an airport, I can pull out my phone and have half a dozen new ways to get where I need to go other than the old way of waiting in the taxi line. That technology-driven set of options is creating a fundamental problem for the consumer. How does the consumer know what to pay attention to? How does the consumer know where to turn their thoughts and then ultimately their behaviors amid all of these choices? To explain that, I put up this deliberately provocative image of a tiger to remind us where we came from. Remember, we evolved under this kind of pressure. We're literally lingering or hunting in the grasses were existential threats to our survival. And as a result, those of us who survived because we evolved the particular coping mechanisms that would help us deal with real-time existential threat. Now, those coping mechanisms still exist. But think of it this way from a very rudimentary perspective. When the tiger is lurking in the grasses and you successfully avoid getting eaten today, well, how do you log somewhere in your memory how to prevent that from happening again in the future? Well, there is a solution that we've evolved, something that helps us know what to pay attention to and what to remember. And it's the same system in both cases. That is the role of emotion. Emotion is what helps us remember not the color of the grass when the tiger was jumping on us, but the direction that he came from, the sound that we heard before he jumped. All of those characteristics that actually matter to our survival, emotion helped us pay attention to them and then helps us log them in memory. Now that's great. That helps me, the individual, survive from one day to the next, and that's where emotion comes from. But we also had to then have the ability to share what we learn. And this is where it gets a little more complicated as to how we evolved. But about at least 70,000 years ago, some say longer ago, we developed the ability to share what we knew so that we could coordinate action. Hey, don't go over there. That's where that tiger almost killed me. Hey, climb that tree first to look around to see what happens. And then we can pass knowledge from person to person, from generation to generation. We evolve culture, but we evolved all of that on the basis of conversation. Take these twin powers, emotion and conversation. You put them together. And that's actually the power that we have today that still lingers with us as consumers, as people interacting with each other in our regular lives, our home lives, our personal lives. Emotion and conversation still with us, still two very powerful forces, even if we don't have tigers that are lurking in the bushes at any moment. So conversation and emotion still work this way. They are connected with each other, and that's important. They reinforce each other. So think of it this way. New information comes in. Brand X wants to offer you a new way to solve this problem. Well, emotion helps you sift through whether that's worth paying attention to. Maybe it motivates you to have a conversation with someone. Have you heard of Brand X? Have you tried them? Did you have a good experience? And now that power of conversation, of course, gets extended digitally so that you don't have to be face-to-face with someone, so that you can extend your emotional questions and concerns into your environment, ask someone else to interact with you, and help you then decide, coordinate action and response. Yes, I'm going to try brand X's new 1-month free trial, or no, I'm not. I'm going to pass and I'm headed for brand Y. That kind of conversation and emotion interplay is still very dynamically at work. And you really can't aim for one without also aiming for the other. And that's part of the real power of what's happening today with technology. So think of it this way. In the old world of marketing, old marketers, and maybe I only mean 10 years ago, used mass advertising to blunt force push on people. I want you to act a certain way, so I'm going to just push and get you to act. And that Super Bowl advertising still fulfills that role today, as do many mass advertising, including digital advertising venues. But new marketers will use emotion-rich conversations, taking advantage of those twin powers of emotion and conversation. You do that not only to tell people what to do, but to find out from them. That's the power of a conversation. It's bidirectional, so that you can find out what people want and help them get it. Now, there's a dimension to this that's really crucial. The technology is specifically useful here in a way that, sure, if we knew conversation was important 20 years ago, we could say, oh, well, we're going to focus on word of mouth, and we did. Or we're going to say, we're going to make sure we have the best in-store salespeople, and we could. But today, technology scales this so that we can put our conversation right in front of the consumer and engage them at the moment and place, the when, where, so that they can get what they want, how they want to get it. Because think of it this way. We estimate that the average person from our survey data pulls out their mobile phone 150 to 200 times a day. Now, each time they're doing it, they have a short list of things that are motivating them to get information, to carry out an action, to look up a bank balance, to book a trip, to shop for something, to communicate. They have a short list of actions. When they pull out those mobile devices, we call those mobile moments, and increasingly we're calling them micro moments because they're getting smaller and smaller. Well, in that moment, if you can position your emotion-rich conversation to help them actually understand better what it is they're trying to accomplish, and to deliver the right information via that conversation in a way that is more likely to be received emotionally at the moment that they have that need. Well, now we're talking about the real technology amplification of these very now hundreds of thousands of year-old capabilities inside the human. It's a merging of these two very potent forces, the new and the old. And that's the power of what technology is now letting us do to bring the best of what humanity has evolved to be and merge that with what technology is now empowering us to be. That combination, that's what's powerful about this. So that's why I say that this fundamental change that technology brings is not technology bringing the change all on its own. It's the technology meeting the consumer, changing the way consumers engage with marketers, enabling a more frequent, emotion-rich, and convenient set of conversations. So as you think about this, 3 things to remember today and as you go forward and think about how you can engage your customer. Start with the consumer. Consumers are the ones in the driver's seat here. They are the ones embracing the technology that meets their needs when, where, and how they want. And all of our research reinforces the fact that if they don't get what they want, when, where, and how they want it, they are completely empowered to go on to something else and walk away from the solution that you offered. So, technology is the tool that we can use to meet those consumers' needs, and thus giving marketing a completely new life by adding emotion-rich conversations. You take those consumers, you take that technology, and this gives companies that embrace conversations will have more power to create more value for themselves and their customers. It's about as win-win as you can get. Take technology, meet evolution, and create a completely different relationship with the customer. And I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. And I'm excited to hear what comes next. I'll turn it back to Emily.
Thank you, James. That was a very valuable input. So moving on, Terrence will be discussing the challenges of implementing a successful conversational marketing strategy. Let's welcome Terrence Fox with his presentation part. Now I will turn on the camera and you will be able to see Terrence.
Okay, good morning. Happy Tuesday, everyone, and thank you, Emily. As she mentioned, my name is Terrence Fox. I serve as the strategy director here at iAdvize. And thank you, James, for sharing your insights earlier. It's obviously excellent to have James in-house, giving his take on conversational marketing in today's market. Prior to my time here at iAdvize with conversational marketing, I come from an email marketing background, but I was drawn to iAdvize because I feel that conversational marketing best correlates to the way that consumers today are looking to engage with brands. Today, I'd like to focus on a very practical aspect of this, and this would be the transition phase for brands moving from an archaic style to conversational marketing, and the challenges they may face when a brand decides to adopt a conversational marketing model. My conversation today will be more so around concrete how-to recommendations to make the transition successful. So obviously, as I've mentioned, we have a bit of a shift on the market today. Conversational marketing is a tremendous opportunity to increase revenue at the company level as it mirrors the way consumers want to be communicated with and their buying process. Historically, brands have implemented a chat solution as a means of providing as close to real-time as possible support. But today, conversational marketing means going way beyond that. It means recreating online the rich experience that customers can have in store when they are looking for products pre-sales. Conversational marketing means engaging with customers who need help before purchasing, unkinking the fire hose of opportunities stuck in the product discovery part of the sales funnel, and communicating with them as they work through their interests, ask their questions, and prep to purchase your product or service. We're quantifying today a 20% lift in online sales when a brand adopts a conversational marketing style and provides the perfect human touch. Today, there are a tremendous amount of conversation opportunities on websites, but brands aren't limited to just communicating on their site, of course. Adopting an omni-channel messaging strategy is critical, as there are over 3 billion monthly active users of messaging apps today and 4 billion active users by 2018. Really, we found that each conversation has to fulfill 4 criteria. It needs to be personal. Customers, of course, love to feel unique. It needs to be available everywhere online. It needs to be able to occur at all times. And of course, lastly, in real time. If you're doing your shopping at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning and you need assistance, you'll likely convert if you get that assistance. And it challenges brands today with that at all times, 24/7 in real time are thought. So, how does that translate from an implementation perspective? How do you ensure the delivery of all of those conversations at scale? Really, what we're looking at here are 2 key challenges for a conversational marketing strategy. The first is the technology, and the second is the respondent, the other person on the end of on the other side of the technology for a brand. So the cost we have associated with it is about a ratio of 1 to 3. A conversation costs on average $1 from a technology perspective and about $3 from a respondent perspective. To make both sides successful, I'll be going over the pieces involved in the technology and the respondent that a brand should keep in mind. So let's dive right into the technology. Within technology, we need to consider messaging functionality, productivity, omni-channel capabilities, and then of course, what all marketers crave, the ability to measure the ROI and to have KPIs and reporting that clearly shows the return on investment. So first, let's look at messaging. Your audience is used to a rich messaging experience. Although there is a lot that happens behind the scenes to deliver value for your customers with messaging, first impressions are everything. Nowadays, we're all used to having what we call a rich messaging experience. Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, iMessage, whatever apps we might be using, these each give the consumer the ability to send text, emojis, pictures, voice, links, maps, whatever it may be. It needs to be clean, clear, and easy to use. That felt a bit like an Acne commercial, but either way, brands must be able to seamlessly integrate a rich experience on their site to avoid any sort of jarring foreign messaging and therefore improve the likelihood that the person abandons. The second thought here is productivity. You have limited resources in-house, you need to optimize their use. We recommend immediately that you focus on creating efficiencies. There are probably hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of conversation opportunities with your online customers, but you want to make sure that the resources you allocate to this technology are allocated wisely. So there are a few key things to keep in mind. The first is going to be segmenting your audience. You want to make sure you're engaging with prospects that have a high potential value. Therefore, you need to empower your team with technology to identify who these prospects may be. And today with big data analysis, you have that capability. The technology is going to help you determine behavioral patterns that show an intent to buy, or those that are possibly stuck in the funnel somewhere, or maybe in a way silently raising their hand for assistance. This is a tremendous opportunity to target those loading up a cart and then spontaneously maybe bounce to a homepage, or maybe they're buying a product and they don't know that they need additional products, which is therefore an upsell opportunity for the brand. Next is routing. It's of course important that you have the right person or bot on the other end of that technology. Bots are a hot word today, of course, but bots aren't entirely ready for human engagement, but they still are a valuable part of a conversational marketing platform. There are many scenarios where bots can assist humans, allowing humans to focus only on what bots are unable to accomplish. For example, some brands can have bots gather necessary information, maybe prerequisites, before handing that conversation off to a human to best prepare the human. I think these are called AI trees, for example. But the idea here is you want to be using a bot in tandem with a human being. By no means are we stressing it's bot versus your in-house team. The idea here is how do we create a perfect storm of utilizing a bot alongside of your more expensive respondent being your in-house colleague. So bots can clearly act as sort of like an exoskeleton to provide additional service and best prepare for your brand. But again, today's consumer requires human interaction and genuine, insightful assistance that is currently unattainable with AI. So here we are with what looks like Saturn. And what this is today is the overview of all of the places your brand might be able to interact with customers today online. You need to, of course, be accessible across all of these touch points. And the conversational marketing platform needs to collect all of the data from these touch points and therefore pass it over to your CRM, or the hub of customer data, whatever you may be using. That same data within the CRM can also be passed the other way to the conversational marketing platform to provide contextual information about a unique user and best prepare your team for the next engagement with a particular visitor. And finally here, what we're going to look at is reporting. There are three key areas within reporting that we need to pay attention to with a conversational marketing platform. The first is obviously the revenue generated from conversation. KPIs such as conversion rate, average order value, repurchase rate, or missed opportunities are going to be important here. The second is going to be tied to the respondent. Satisfaction rate with NPS, first time resolution rate. Did the rep solve the problem immediately? Are a key point to look at. And then the final part here is going to be monitoring your costs. You want to make sure that you are, again, optimizing the use of your staff wisely. We're looking at the individual performance of particular reps. And again, utilizing these reps is critical here. You want to make sure that they're not just sitting there idle or they're not overwhelmed. They're allocated appropriately across the volumes of traffic that you might have throughout a day. This concludes the technology section. Let's roll right into the respondent. So, as I presented earlier in my slides, the respondent is the other major challenge here in implementing a successful conversational marketing style. When allocating respondents, there are two key points to keep in mind: the quality of their responses and the scalability. When it comes to the respondent, you want to make sure that they're able to tackle complex questions, that they're able to properly convey emotion, as James was mentioning earlier, and that they're able to consistently, day in, day out, respond with a certain level of satisfaction. The second part here is your brand 24/7? Are you scaling appropriately? 24/7, it seems like it makes a clear sense. Not many brands are open beyond 9 to 6 p.m. with their customer support team, but not many people are able to shop from 9 to 6 during working hours. A lot of people get it done in the evening or weekend, and you need to make sure you're scalable for that. The second part is, of course, volatility of demand, and I was getting to this a bit before. You want to make sure you're allocating resources appropriately, and as you can see in the graph below, these are the conversation opportunities in your industry for Q3 and Q4 of 2017. And you can see traffic and conversation opportunities fluctuates. You want to make sure you're best allocating your staff for that traffic. And the reason for this is clear. You want to make sure none of your teammates are idle or overwhelmed. And also, of course, it's expensive to be hiring and training and things like that. So if you've got a good team, you want to make sure you're allocating them well to the peaks and valley of traffic. Now, this is my favorite part of today's conversation. It's about respondents and where they're available in pre-sales and in post-sales. As mentioned, respondents can involve anyone or anything that helps your consumer find an answer. It can be a chatbot, a forum, an in-house agent, or even an outsourced agency. Typically, most brands today are set up for care and post-sales. They have forums, fax, agents, etc., providing customer care. However, not many brands are investing heavily enough in their pre-sales focus. When you walk into a brick and mortar store, you're greeted. When you pick up an item or inspect something that they offer, you're usually greeted again or asked if you needed assistance. Brands need to invest far more heavily in a product discovery and pre-sales focused solution. Move from a reactive environment online to one that is proactive, one that doesn't require a consumer to find your contact page or live chat to engage with you, one that instead finds them. And one such way of doing this, and one such way of putting a good resource to use in conversational marketing, are the brand's own best advocates. Today, when you go to a brand's website, they generally list all of their reviews. Having spent some time at TripAdvisor myself, I know the importance of reviews for both a business as well as a consumer. And today we have numerous people passionate about particular products or services available on the market, and they're already sharing their insight and opinion. The challenge here is putting them in touch with the right people at the right time. Okay, so let's take a deeper dive and look at who these experts and enthusiasts would actually be. They are as you can see in the top left, the owners of beauty salons who can provide detailed advice on makeup selection and actual product use. They're the marathoner running outside day in, day out, trying the new shoes, apparel, and accessories that allow runners today to track the distance and details that were previously unknown about running. They're the gamers and the tech nerds that can again share and provide advice that's on par or far better than other gamers and tech nerds. And also, obviously, in the bottom right, you see these are people that are, everyday enthusiasts. They're fashion experts, stylists, people that can not only sell and help you sell a certain product, but provide a next level customer experience by providing also upsell opportunities. You want these boots? These boots go great with this pair of jeans, for example. Now let's take a look at someone who's already doing this today. Cdiscount, a leading European e-commerce platform comparable to Amazon in the US, is doing this at the moment, and the experience is quite extraordinary. So let's use an example of me browsing the site. I come across a computer, I don't know anything about computers, and maybe I'm buying it as a gift for a relative. While browsing the site, I find one that looks attractive. It's in my price point, but again, I don't really know if this is going to meet the needs of the recipient of my gift. On the bottom right-hand corner, much like other chat experiences, I'm given the opportunity to speak, but the key thing is I'm given the opportunity to speak with an independent expert, someone who's knowledgeable about this product and has actually possibly used this product or can speak to it more eloquently than an in-house colleague who may only have inventory and product spec knowledge. And these enthusiasts, like that expert, they're all around us. So very similar to Uber, we're tapping into the gig economy here and putting these passionate users who outside of their 9-to-5 day job have other hobbies that they spend most of their time focusing on and would be passionately enthusiastic about sharing their opinions on it. Today there are over 10,000 experts in 100 plus verticals. And again, these folks are all around us, happily willing to leave reviews on your website. So let's put them to work. Let's let them share that advice real time. With Cdiscount, we saw a leap in conversion rate as well as satisfaction rate. Obviously critically important for any brand today. But obviously the key thing here is we're not looking to replace your in-house colleagues. We're looking to supplement and provide another arm to add to your arsenal where genuine peer-to-peer conversations can occur. That's it for my piece today. Thank you, Emily and James, for having me and allowing me to speak a bit further about it. Looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you, Terrence. This concludes the formal presentation bit of the webinar today. Guys, this is where the fun part begins. If you could give us a few seconds to gather the questions together, James and Terrence will be answering them momentarily. Just a quick reminder, you can either type your questions in the feed shown on the right, or you can tweet us your questions with the hashtag iAdviseLive.
Okay, everyone, thanks. This is James back talking now. We've got a couple of questions that came in, so I want to address those, at least a couple that I can talk to, and then perhaps Terrence can tackle a few of the more that I'm looking at here. Let's start with the first one. James, hello. You talk about emotions. What kind of emotions do you think should be conveyed to the consumer? So this is actually a more complicated question than it sounds, so I'm glad you asked it. I think very often when we bring up emotion, we have a tendency to think that emotion, you just need to have good emotions or bad emotions, and we need to emphasize the good ones and de-emphasize the bad ones. And certainly when we're doing customer experience design, journey mapping, those kinds of things, which are also an important part of relating to the customer, it's always good to reduce the amount of negative emotion someone experiences. However, what we want to understand is that the emotion that someone feels is going to be a product of their experience. And how do I make this clear? I am predisposed for certain kinds of emotions, and if you can respond to those specific emotions rather than just emotion generically, you're more likely to show me that you care. You're more likely to show me that you understand me. This is true in human relationships as well as business relationships. And so it's not just trying to make someone feel happy versus sad. It's about trying to understand what are the emotions that are contextually appropriate to this relationship I'm trying to build. Is it confidence? Is it reassurance? Is it a sense of adventure? These are all emotional dimensions of people's daily experience that you need to determine which of those dimensions are appropriate for my customer, for my product experience, and so on. It's very complicated to do that. The technology, again, is helping us to scale that. We're seeing much more AI being applied to this question, but you can't really use the AI effectively to figure out the emotions of your customer experience if you're not even aware of and mentally trying to connect to the emotions of your customer. And frankly, one of the reasons why conversation is so great is the conversation is that bi-directional connection to the customer where you can actually have them help you figure out their emotional needs, and that's important to it as well. Let's see, I'll move to the second question that we had, which is authenticity. Now, I think both of us brought this up, so maybe Terrence will add something after I comment here. But why do you mention authenticity being important for these conversations? So part of, for whatever reason, our human experience is that we know that not everyone who is saying something to us is being honest, is speaking at face value. And so we are constantly tasked with figuring out who is being honest and authentic and who is just trying to take advantage of a situation or get something from us. And it's kind of difficult to say it as if it's just those two options. But let's just put it down to this. Authenticity means not just saying what you think the customer wants to hear, but actually caring whether what you're saying is going to help the customer. And I think it's a little bit like that old definition of an obscenity from the Supreme Court. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I know it when I see it. And authenticity is like that for consumers. They can't always tell you, well, to be authentic, you have to do this, this, and this. But they can tell when you are being authentic, or at least they're pretty good at telling when you're being authentic. I don't know, Terrence, if you want to add anything to that, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think a key point, and just to keep in mind as well, is you want to make sure you establish a certain amount of credibility and that there's a fine line of trust between you and any potential prospects as well. That trust needs to be intact, and if you're a credible source, of course, the likelihood that conversion or a happy customer exists is going to improve. But I do agree with what you mentioned earlier as well, James. Moving on, it looks like we have a question about product experts. How would a brand find those? Generally, my advice here is that you likely already have them. When I go to a majority of websites today, there's an outstanding review base. Amazon has those super reviewers. Many brands already have these product experts and people very loyal to the brand and products that not only are trying the products daily, but can, of course, give I'll say insider advice to use of these products, or perhaps even localized personal human advice for those looking into a product you may offer or a service you may offer. So with these brand advocates, you likely already have a strong resource of them within your social media accounts, or tied to actually reviews of the products you have already. So of course, you can help more bubble up to the surface with social media ads, but again, I likely would say that you already have them. So don't let them sit stale and underutilized. Put them to work. The next question. My company has live chat implemented on our website. How is that different from what you're describing? This is an excellent question, and really where I think conversational marketing shines. The question says live chat, and I hate that it's called live chat because in my opinion it's dead chat, in that you have to, one, likely on a lot of brands, find the chat, bring it to life by clicking on it as a website visitor and then filling out a form and being routed to the right person, and that feels very static and isn't actually dynamic. So with live chat, in my opinion, what you're looking to do is make it proactive. You want to engage with the website visitors that are in most need of assistance or are looking at high-value products, and have a pre-sales and product discovery focus as well, instead of a stale, static, archaic, support-only focus. So that would be the key difference in what I'm stressing between live chat and the live chat many brands already have on the site. So things to certainly value or criticize your current situation against. It looks like we have a couple for you, James. Go ahead.
Sure. So the next question is, what do you think of chatbots? And this is where I give away my geek credentials. I love them just because I love everything new and I'm interested in trying everything. However, I'm very aware of the limitations of chatbots as we're currently experiencing them. People are using chatbots. If you think about it as a conversation, you'd say, oh, well, then chatbots should be great, but rarely do they achieve what we're talking about here in terms of conversation. And going back to what I described as the thing that we evolved 70,000 years ago, is the ability to compare and share information, to coordinate action. Very few chatbots are able to do that. And that's one of the things that's so powerful about bringing the technology and the people together so that we get the best of what humans are able to do, which is to connect to you as a human and communicate with you that way. But then also having the technology in there helping us to scale the delivery of that experience. So, we'll obviously see how that evolves over time. But I would say in the follow-up question from the questioner was, are chatbots compatible with emotions? And I would say, as they're typically implemented today, generally no. Well, I should say, to the degree that your app or your website can reward emotions or encourage emotions, so can chatbots. Any interface can, but they're not going to do it at high a level as we can with the kind of conversational tools that we're talking about here today. So last question, it looks like, how do we know conversational marketing is going to be a long-lasting trend? This is a fair question. We end up dealing with a lot of things, and I've been doing what I do for 2 decades now, and we end up covering a lot of topics and technologies that for a while seem to be really big and then fade away. They get replaced by something else. That's definitely been true over the years. The thing that I would say about conversational marketing, though, especially if we do it right, is that conversation has been serving us well for, as I said, 70,000 years at least as a species. Now, how we do it, what the rules of the conversation are, what it means to us emotionally, culturally, all of that continues to change and evolve and is localized. And so, of course, what conversational marketing actually looks like will evolve from year to year to year. But the ability to converse, especially this thing that Terrence is talking about proactively engaging in conversation with the customer, where hopefully you've had permission to make suggestions that are relevant to them as part of that conversation, and you're not just responding to them having to issue all the commands and then you are responding in the conversation, but you're actively showing up, ready to serve, ready to help someone. That, to me, that's essentially what we are wired for, is to have partners in our lives that will interact with us like that. And so I'd have to say, yes, conversational marketing is going to be around for the long term, even though I'll be as excited and surprised as you are at how that particularly evolves.
Yeah, and I'm sure it comes a bit stronger coming from James, the Forrester research, but in my opinion, again, it has evolved to the point now where we're engaging with the way the consumers want to be engaged with. They're all on the messaging apps that I discussed earlier. You as a brand need to make sure that you're present there as well and are able to give that real-time, 24/7 genuine human advice that they're craving. So in my opinion, of course, it'll be around for the long haul and long trend, as it is how our buyers are buying and looking to be engaged with.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us in our webinar. I hope you gathered some valuable insights into your industry. As mentioned earlier in the webinar, we'll be sending over the recorded webinar as well as the slides to the attendees. Please feel free to share them with your colleagues. Don't forget to tweet us with #iAdviseLive with some questions if we haven't been able to answer them during our Q&A session. We will get back to you then. Have a good week ahead. Thanks and bye, guys.